the library need a cleaner, or do they have somebody to do all the carpets and everything?
You know what, no, I think they just, yeah,
Do they need
okay.
volunteers?
It used to be
No.
they had their employees, like,
Yeah,
that would do it
yeah,
all the
no,
time.
they hire out now,
They hire,
and
oh,
actually, they are just finished. I can send you a link of, how to apply.
Well, I don't wanna be an employee
So,
there.
yeah, no, it's not an employee, it's it's contracted out.
Oh, okay, so do you know if they're
Like,
looking for somebody?
Well, I know that their contract is over, so whether they're renewing with those people, I don't know.
Well, I can give them a lot better rate than those.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, so, okay, I'll send you something.
100%. Cool. Appreciate that. I've been meaning to ask you for a while.
Yeah,
I kept
good
forgetting
timing,
it.
actually, they
Yeah.
just said it this
Dan, would you
week.
have a mice on hand by
Yeah.
chance? A mouse?
Do you know how many people
Yeah.
would do the
Great.
I see 2 people coming in.
same one
Yeah.
Thanks.
Is it like a bigger company, do you think, or is it like a couple like ladies from PPG?
At first it was a husband and wife, and then they have these other 2 people,
Right.
and I'm sure they're connected somehow, but I
Fair
don't know.
enough. Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, send me that link and then I'll send in an application.
Yeah.
I wish there was more people here. Like I feel like Joanne and
Yeah, it was Joanne.
Yeah, I'm guessing it's just,
Lynn and
we've had a busy couple of days.
gotcha.
But, you know what, let's see if people are watching online yet.
I wish we could do Greek every single week because our learning would accelerate in
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
Yeah, 2 weeks it's not ideal, but I mean,
today was, would have been no way, because we had a big meeting after the service and then this tonight. But if we could find other opportunities, I'd be open to that.
okay.
Even just,
Yeah, well, let's just
Yeah.
maybe run it for another month and then, well, we can all vote on it, but,
well, certainly, let's have next Sunday
Yeah.
morning, like we were going.
Yeah,
to,
100%.
And then we'll go from there.
cause cause I can't put too much more on my plate. Like, I'd like to join your Thursday group, but I can't put more on my plate.
Oh, I get it, for sure. Okay, well, if people can hear me at home, this is our Sunday night Paideia group with presentations from Chris and John tonight. So Chris, let's get started.
Yeah, I'll just grab the keyboard.
Oh, yep,
Yep.
you're right, and I have to get it so that is
Another school.
on the screen.
You're not graduating. When do you graduate?
Graduating this year.
So like,
I thought I had it.
in the
Oh,
April. Sorry. Oh, that's awesome. You got a big party?
yeah, all the groupies are gonna come by.
Yeah.
I'm moving here 'cause that light's right
That's
under
exciting.
that light.
Oh, you know.
That would be
Are you
exciting.
going to, do you know if you're going to do your master's right away?
Oh,
Not yet. I gotta see if I
There it
can get a job. Well,
Like at the bank or something?
yeah,
Like
well, I'm
finance
probably
job?
gonna have to submit. Like, I will probably submit my
Okay, so that's your
application
first,
for the masters in like a couple
Yeah.
weeks or something
Yeah,
like that.
okay,
and,
cool.
Okay.
all right, there you go.
Thanks.
So just
Yeah,
up and
no,
down
just
arrow
fine.
keys, so you can- sure.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
I'm like a financial advisor for
Yeah,
Sell these
Kinda
ridiculous new phones.
because like you still need
Oh, okay.
a lot of
Better.
them still require you to have like a degree in like finance or
Really?
accounting or even like business.
Okay, now people at home should see it.
How was the, oh, sorry, you're starting now.
Yeah,
Okay. Could we see it as well?
yes. Sorry.
Yes. There you go. Okay. Okay. Today I'm going to be going over some of the excerpts of Genesis from the Bible, and you're probably asking why. I'm going to do it in Greek, and you're probably asking why Greek and not Hebrew for the Old Testament. The Old Testament was written in Hebrew before it was written in Greek. Well, in the past, Guinness Book of World Records has said that Greek is the most richest language of all languages. It has 5 million words and 70 million word types. And it has a lot of root words. So the Greek, to me, is one of the most expansive languages that is before the Romance languages like Spanish, French, which are derived from Latin. So Greek and Latin are for sure the richest, most expansive languages. But personally, for me, I find that Greek speaks to me a lot more. And it's important to note that language speaks. It's not just that language speaks, but it's that language itself, it speaks. It says a lot. So as you start to intonate the Greek language, as you start to speak it, you start to notice that your knowledge for the material that you're working with, it starts to change and it starts to adapt. Okay. Pressing the down arrow and it's not, oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. So let's start with, no worries. Okay. So let's start with the first line of Genesis. The first line is En arche epoisen hotheos ton uranon kai ten gin. That means in the beginning, God made the heavens and the earth. Oh yes, I should be doing that. So en arche epoisen ho theos ton uranon kai ten gin. So let's. So I just want to talk a little bit about this first word. It's known as arche, but it's pronounced arche. This is something that Aristotle says in the Nicomachean Ethics about the word arche, and I find it really summarizes the richness of the word arche. It's very equivalent to the word logos as well. It has that richness and the deepness where you can't get one particular, you can't just define it in one sentence. It has to be looked at from multiple angles. So Aristotle says in the Nicomachean Ethics, for the arche, this can mean, the arche, it's roughly translated as origin or beginning point or first principle, is a fact that a thing is so. If this be satisfactorily ascertained, there will be no need to know the reason why it is so. So scholars will normally, so this comes out of the Nicomachean Ethics, and it's coming when Aristotle is talking about students in relationship to learning about the good. So an example I could give is, imagine that a student is new to fencing. He's never fenced in his life before. So scholars will interpret this phrase from Aristotle defining the arche as meaning that the arche would be the first principles that a fencer would learn in order to continue getting better at fencing. So it's kind of like a support, or it's a framework that allows that fencer to get better at fencing. However, this Aristotle actually means something a lot more deep, and it is in the words. Hopefully, oh, sorry, I don't have the thing up. There we go. It is in the word phainoito. That's the part where he's saying, if this be one sec. Arche kai etoto phainoito. Yes. Yes, that is going to be satisfactorily ascertained. Phainoito archontes. So scholars will normally translate Aristotle as being someone who is concerned with like reason. It's like so in this case, for the arche is the fact that a thing is so. So this would mean that me learning how to fence in a way where I am, say, adapting to the stance I need to take, or learning those first principles of whatever makes me good. The arche would be the conditioning, that conditioning factor that allows me to be good at the thing that I'm doing. And he says that if this be satisfactorily ascertained, in other words, that you make that leap in the way that you're learning it in order to get there, then there will be no need to know the reason why it is so. In other words, you won't need to question that thing being good because it is just good in itself. It is good for itself.
Because it's been defined?
Because well, this is a really good question. You're asking because you're asking the reason why something is good is because, well, it works, right? But how do we know that it works, right? And that's what Aristotle is questioning with the arche, right? The arche is that origin point that allows something to be good in itself and for itself. The DOT is the on account of which. It's translated here as why something is so. But really what it means is the DOT is the on account of which. Again, it sounds like he's reasoning, like he's just thinking about things, right? But the on account of which in this case would be that thing that allows me to be good, getting those first principles of being a good fencer. And then that continuation that will from that origin point, from those first principles.
So it's like the condition for the possibility of the rest of the activity.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really good point. That's the phenomenological kind of interpretation of Aristotle that I feel like scholars are missing in that sense. Aristotle has this beautiful understanding of life that I feel like a lot of modern day scholarship they'll say that Aristotle likes to categorize things. He likes to put things into genus and species. I want to organize this into the system. I want to say that this is the hierarchy of being, that this is the thing that lets all things come from it, and he's very categorical, but I try to not read Aristotle just in that lens, because that's how people try to understand. But there's also this understanding of life. As I'm talking about this fencing thing, there's that lived experience that comes out of trying to get better at fencing. There's that lived experience component, and Aristotle cares about that. He's not just trying to reason through things in this cold, systematic way. But that will say a little bit about the arche. One other thing to note is how he's using the word finite noito, which comes from the root phino, which means to manifest or for something to reveal itself. And this is another word that's connected to phino. It's apophanestai. It means to bring something or to render something into an appearance. All of these words are connected. They have an inherent connection to this word arche. And I do find that the Bible is influenced by Plato and also Aristotle.
And so this is the word that's translated as beginning in Genesis?
Yes, exactly, right. So,
I've never considered, I've always first gone to the Hebrew, obviously, because that's what it was written in. I've never considered what deeper meaning you could possibly get. And perhaps the reasoning behind the rabbis that translated it into Greek, why they chose these words.
Yeah.
It's a loaded word, and that's why
Because they're probably influenced by it, as you said.
There totally is deep influences of Aristotle, but there's also like things that the Bible is doing that's very unique. That like for example, this idea of taking just one God to be that centerpiece is like a very interesting, unique thing that the Bible's doing. That I don't like. It's very straight. It's a very strange kind of thing that the Bible does, because you have this pantheon before the Bible, and you also have the Mesopotamian kind of mythologies as well. But they all have all these different gods in play. But then you have this unifying order when the Bible is propagated that's trying to unify all the gods together into one God, and that's a very strange thing to me that I still don't understand quite. Right.
I just want to make a comment about when we're thinking about biblical revelation, like, some people, these literalists, these fundamentalists who read the Bible, it's just simply God's word, but I think the Christian concept of revelation stems from this sort of Greek sort of concept of the make manifest appearance and revelation, right? So,
Yeah, that's a good point.
yeah, and that's I think where we need to start when we start thinking about any kind of biblical revelation. It's like you need to start with some of these Greek concepts. It's not as if God speaks to us in a fundamentalist, literalistic kind of way through the Bible. Like it is, a revelation, and it's a participation in this grand narrative, right? So
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, but that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. Another word that's interesting out of this first phrase is epoisen, which comes from the root poiesis, or poin. It means to make, but I translate it as production or productive power. It's trying to bring something about. So poiesis is another really important word for me. These two words, arhe and poiesin, to make something or to produce something. I might as well just say it now that Genesis is interesting in this fact. Of course, God will make man in the next couple of lines, but even before a man is made, there's still this innately man-like thing in God before man is even made. As we know, man is made in the image of God. But there's gonna be some things that I hopefully will come across where it's like that the kind of the powers of God, the powers that God is using. There's something unique about the powers that He's using, and that being bound up with the man's woman and man's spirit as well. Okay. So here's another interesting. The next line. We have. One sec. So this is how you'd say the Greek. He dege en auratos kai akata squashtos kai skotos epano tes abuso kai neuma theou epifereto epano to hudatos. But the earth was unseen and unready, and darkness was upon the abyss, and the Spirit of God bore upon the water. Now, this is an interesting word that's being used, aeuratos. It means invisible. And this is the thing I was saying before about the God's power and then the spirit of man. That aeuratos is normally translated as invisible or unseen. But it's like, okay, like, why are they saying this? Like, why is Genesis saying that the earth was unseen and unready? But then God, right, he moved over this water and also this earth that seems to be in this half-formed kind of state. It's not quite appearing into in full view or fully visible as of yet. But this is kind of the weird thing that I get out of Genesis. It's that the way that it's being said is that it's as if there's someone perceiving or it's as if the story that's being told it is based on the fact that something has the possibility of being seen, but it's not yet seen as of yet. That's what I'm getting at with the man is made in the image of God. There's a strange kind of thing that I see there.
God is the intellect that is going to be applied to the chaos, applied to the unseen and unready, or in the Hebrew, the chaos and void.
Yeah.
You know?
Chaos and void. There's also an interesting way that they use it. I think that they will translate I like this translation, this unready, that something is unready. It's, of course, readiness. When we say readiness, it's the at-handment of something. It's something being at hand. But there's also that'll be translated as there's an interesting translation. You get this out of the Amplified Bible. It is a waste, that the world was waste. The world was waste and void, or the world was waste and emptiness. And I really like that. I think there's something that's very true in, I believe it's actually, I'm not sure if it's oarotos or akata squashtos, being translated as waste. I'm pretty sure it's akata squashtos, but using the word waste, it's as if, again, it's kind of like, it's this unused potential, or this unused possibility that's there.
Just so we have it, in the Amplified version, it says, the earth was formless and void, or a waste and emptiness. A waste and emptiness.
Yeah, so it goes into the chaos that you spoke of. That would be a waste. It's something that, it's yeah. I really like that word for some reason. Okay. Yes. Okay, I talked about those. And that's also an interesting word. Epipheteto means bore upon the water. Amplified Bible will say he hovered over the water. There's brooding over the water, or he moved over the water. But I like the word. I like bore. I think that's a good translation. Okay. Kai eipen hothios genetheto phos kai egeneto phos kai aiden hothios to phos hoti kalon. So this is really interesting. So this is where God says, "Let there be light," and there was light. The word genetheto, it's connected to genestai, which means for something to come into being. And this coming into being is very, very important. I believe personally that there's an ancient way of understanding this word that no one has really understood as of yet. That's what I believe about.
That's quite the bold statement.
Yeah, I think it is
a shot of just you talking. Make the case.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that. I think that this is going to be a very poetic way of speaking about it, but I think that there's a connection between genestai, coming into being, and there's also a connection to, as it's being said, the ageneto, which means letting something, let there be. This is the poetic part, that I believe that there is an implicit sending, or delivering, or messengering that's bound up with that word. That there is some kind of messengering or delivering. There's the sending that happens in that word. Of course, there are so many connections between that word coming into being and also the womb.
Yes.
Or what you call gestation. So
literally, my mind immediately went to, because where I've heard that word before is used in connection with the birth narrative of Jesus.
Yeah, that's
that
really.
Word is used of Jesus, and from our understanding,
Which word?
Genestai, I believe. Or would it be ageneto? Okay, genetheto.
Just so we're all clear, I myself included, that word here is not the same word that you're referencing, right? They're two different words.
Genestai and then ageneto. Yes. So here, so I'll just point to the word geneth. It's actually genetheto. Genetheto would be how you say that word. I'd like to actually do a quick Google search because I do believe that there is a connection between genestai and then,
I think that, yeah.
but I just want to do that real quick and see.
You know what? I'll look it up as well. Nobody?
Ah, okay. The
What?
I'm not gonna sing with you.
Look at this Gen Zero over here. He doesn't.
I know, like, what is Jeopardy?
Yeah.
That's funny.
genomai is the root word.
Right.
Yeah, so it's I'm not sure if the word is alliteration. It's I guess alliteration of the word ginomai, which means to come into being.
Yes.
I got the word wrong. It wasn't genestai. It was ginomai. So that's good. Thanks for asking me to look that up, Dan. It's very helpful. But the case still stands that there is a connection there between delivering something into the world. Okay. There's also this word phos. This word phos is very, very important to the Greeks. Of course, phos means light. Oh no! What happened? What? Oh. My. Dan. Is this the updated slide that I sent? The updated presentation that I sent you? Because I sent.
only saw one email.
Oh.
You sent to you?
Yes, I actually sent one before I came here, and it's the newest one. It's actually the updated one.
7:10. Yeah.
It says updated.
Yeah, that's the one.
Oh, that's the one. That's really weird. It didn't save. That sucks. Maybe I didn't save. Ah, geez, that actually sucks. Okay. Well, I'll try to talk about it anyways. So, so the word phos, it means light in Greek. But this word is a very, very important word. And there's different things I can say about light. One thing is the word phosphoros. Phosphoros means light bringer. It can mean morning star. Or it can mean light carrier. That's a very important word to the Greeks. And one sec. Let me see if I did this on the other slide. Oh, don't know what's happening. Oh, maybe I went to the end. That's probably what happened. I went the wrong way. Jeez. Okay. Oh, yes, I talked about that. Okay. So what's important about light here, when he's saying, and there was light, to me is the fact that light does two things. One is that it is a means for travel. We can say that about light. That light is proportioned through, I guess maybe John could correct me here, magnetic waves. Could you say that?
The light is coordinated through magnetic waves.
Is the light coordinated? Yes.
Kind of.
Okay.
Like
I said, is it
photons.
proportioned? In other words, that light
Yeah,
travels through.
Yeah, I mean, typically when we think of light, we think of wavelengths, but photons have two kinds of movement. They're both a particle and a wave.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll just say that they travel through waves. So that's one association with light, that it is proportioned, or that travels through. It has that inherent sending in it, which is to me important connection to let there be light, and then there was light. And light also has the glow to it. It also has an illumination to it. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that light has two functions. One is that it illuminates, it shows something. Another thing is that it delivers, or it sends something. Yeah.
I want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly, because I think there's a really cool insight in here if I am understanding it correctly. So the phrase that is "let there be,"
Okay. Go
the
back
term
to
that's "let there be" there
yes.
is related to the same term that's used, that's translated as "conceived" in fact in the Bible, of to bring forth.
To come into to
Yeah.
bring forth. Yes.
And so just so we're all aware, like in the birth narrative, Matthew 1:20, it says, let me pull it up here.
Yeah. It's interesting.
When so Joseph, the angel says to Joseph, saying, don't worry, the child that has been conceived to Mary is of the Holy Spirit. It says, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child who had been conceived, the word we're talking about, in her is of the Holy Spirit. So the Holy Spirit, or God, brought forth,
Produced.
produced Jesus in Mary. And that's why we hold the doctrine that Jesus actually didn't have an existence before this moment. He was brought forth into existence supernaturally, according to the narrative, by God in Mary. Now, what I'd like to know is there a connection between that word and the word that I have here? Maybe not for right now. We'll figure that out afterwards.
The word conceive is a Latin word.
Right. But
it's conceptare.
I mean, in the Greek, it's Gnao.
Gonna
I had to press play.
genato.
Gnao.
Sorry, can you say that?
Gnao.
Genao.
It is from the root that means, to be born, to be begotten.
Okay, interesting.
So anyway, I just think what an amazing, awesome connection. If there is a connection there to be had, we'll confirm that later at some point, of God saying, let there be light. He's bringing light into the world, and yet the same word is used of Jesus, who is called.
That would be an I think that, that's...
Like, there might not be anything to this, but at the same time, there could be something really interesting that's a connection to make.
Yeah, I like the thinking there. I think that's a good idea, I think, to propose, and I like that a lot. One other word to note here is the word kalon.
Just put it there.
It's another word that Plato and Aristotle use a lot. It means perfection, like ultimate perfection. And another thing is this happened. This is a very common thing in this in Genesis. When God deems that something is good, He keeps saying that over and over and over again. That He held that something was good. I think that thing isn't moving. I don't know why. So that's another important word. Kalon. Right. So then he says, Kai. It's doing it again, I think, Dan.
This was mine.
Yeah. That's weird. It's like it's moving on the thing, but it's not. It's like it's lagging. I see. It's lagging. I think. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, it's just lagging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kai daikotison. It's not moving. There we go. Kai daikotison. Ho theos. Anameson. This is an important word. Anameson. Tu photos. Kai. Okay. Anameson tu skotos. So he says that God parted between the light and between the darkness. And God said, and God, kai epin, sorry, aipen, kai aipen. Aipen actually has a connection to the word logos because it's connected to legomai, and legomai is connected to logos. Legomai just means to say something, but then logos is like the word.
The thing you say.
Yeah, so aipen has a connection to logos. So God said, aipen, otheos, and then here we go again, genetheto, and then stedioma. It means so God said, "Let there be a firmament." Of course, we talked about this a little bit last time we met. Stedioma, translated as firmament in a lot of the translations, it can mean a lot of things. One thing it can mean is like firmament. Of course, means this arched vault. Like a vault is like this arched roof that hangs above you. But stedioma also has the connection to solidity as well. It's a really strange connection. I'm not sure what to make of it. But basically he's saying that there's this, and this is the thing that I'm getting with Aristotle and Plato. There's a connection here, actually. I believe so. That in this word stedioma, which if you Google it, it actually means it has a connection to solidity. It has a connection to a framework and support. So you have this support in the middle, in the between, the anameson. And in this support or between, you get this separation. The Amplified Bible says this daikotison can mean separate. It can also mean distinguish as well. That's another connection to man is made in the image of God, to distinguish something. But you get this separation in this middle between, and then you get this separation. You have this. This stedioma, this firmament, and then there's this separation between the water and the water. He says. So he says, and let there be a firmament in the midst of the water, and let it be for parting between water and water. Again, this is like a fascinating metaphysical kind of thing that's being done here, because he's saying that again, there's this middle. This middle holds a solidity to it, and this solidity is what's dividing or separating or distinguishing between the water on the below and the water up high. The water up high is the heavens in this vaulted sky, and then below will just be where the earth is, the gen. So it's really interesting, and I've tried to look for like Bible scholarship, and there's not a lot of Bible scholarship on the type of analysis that I like to do, which is phenomenological. There's not that much. It's more of just like talking about the history, like, oh, let's compare, the Mesopotamian myths to God, and it's not really
what do you
going.
Mean by, remind me again what that.
Phenomenology.
Yeah, remind me. Like, what do you mean by that in relation to like a Bible text?
Yeah. So what phenomenology is doing is it's letting something say itself in the way that, as I mentioned in the very first slide, it's letting it say itself in the most expansive, most with the widest possible range that you could have in letting it open itself to you. So again, it relates to I know I have one more minute, but it relates to something you got with last time, Dan, which I found was very important, which was what you got in the word the good.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh wait, like the good, like that word. Like I thought, like I had this ready-made understanding of it beforehand, but then what you did is that you opened that word to me in a way that I now understand the
Right.
deeper implication that it has.
So
That's what the
you're-
it's hermeneutics and phenomenology blending together, really.
Right. So you're looking for, as you said, a hermeneutic that focuses on not necessarily the historical context of the text. I mean, those are good things and good to know, but like the deeper meaning of the text within the words themselves.
Yeah, because the words
I
they
like doing
speak.
that too.
Yeah, the words they speak for themselves,
Yeah.
and then you start to get that deeper meaning out of it. Yeah.
In fact, and so it's 10 after, so we want to give John 20 minutes.
That's cool.
Huh?
I want to make sure.
Oh,
do you
please.
want to do something?
Oh, I did. I just wanted to, like, I was thinking it would be very interesting to continue to do stuff like this. And if in 2 weeks we want to pick either the same text and keep going deeper or pick a different text, I think it would be really great just to, that's my wheelhouse, right?
I think it's great to combine the Greek, right? Because we're learning
Yeah, well,
the letters of the Greek. That's
here's what I was
fine,
thinking.
right? But
that I can study the Hebrew, give a very short presentation
Cool.
on that, and we can compare the words.
cool. That's
Is
interesting.
that cool?
That's really cool. I like that idea.
All right.
You know, what's interesting is you said you're interested in studying theology. I don't know if that's something you're still going to do, but I think this kind of a project I think is really interesting. You know, like because everybody says, oh, go back to the original languages, go back to the original. You know, but like, yeah, like you're right. When certain, you know, even if the Bible's written in like Hebrew, you know, the rabbis are translating the Greek are from a different era. Like they're from, you know, they've been influenced by all
That's
the
right.
Greek philosophy and stuff. You know, in many ways, it could be almost a completely different theology.
Right.
Right. So doing that kind of historical study, because I think that's even with the New King James, people do this kind of work with the the King James version. It's like, yeah, okay, even if the King James version is not faithful to the original text, it's still like a book that captures a sort of an era, like a culture.
Every translation reflects the time in which it was made, no doubt, and the culture. Like that's why you can take a look at even just a translation from 100 years ago. That's going to reflect a more fundamentalist mindset because that was more common. But now you'll get a translation, and it's going to reflect, like there's even some liberal translations that don't use male pronouns for God because the reasoning is God isn't male or female, so we should have neutral terms. The point being is it very much reflects the time in which it was
Yeah.
made.
Another thing I want to say, because we were talking about unseen and light and stuff like that, and this would be if you want to do like a dissertation, because a dissertation is supposed to be really focused. You know, Augustine, because I was reading an interesting passage in Augustine, I actually read it months ago when I was talking about Augustine. You know, he talks about sending the rays of my eyes as messengers. Okay, so there's like a double analogy there. Is your eyes see things, but it's like sending rays as messengers. You know, so really unpacking what, you know, how Augustine or how some of these theologians understood light, eyesight in relation to their conception of truth, or metaphysics of truth. I think that would be a really interesting study to engage in.
I think for the first time we've had 9 people watching.
Nice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
So that's great. We're very excited about that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Chris. That
Yeah,
was
no worries.
fantastic.
Thanks.
And like I said, I think we should continue it for sure. All right, we're going to welcome John to
The only theologian that I know who does, I don't know if he's dead, but Michel Henry is the one who does what you're asking about.
Is he alive?
I don't know if he's alive.
Yeah, you're right. Michel Henry. I've been
think
wanting
he's
to read him in a. Yeah, apparently he's really good.
Do you want the mouse or?
He died in 2002.
Do you want the mouse?
I don't need it.
just the USB part.
Gotcha. Sorry, I forgot that.
Oh, it's not a big deal.
Do you think, like maybe like after John's presentation, there's a 3-minute YouTube video I want to show about Aristotle?
Sure.
That relates to Chris. Chris is interested in Aristotle.
That'd be great.
Yeah, Aristotle's.
I like Aristotle, but and you're right. Like he sounds boring, but
Yeah, people don't understand it.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of them.
Yeah. So today I want to talk about some different ethical theories. So I'm going to do a summary of.
You're much quieter, so.
Thank you, Dan. I want to do a summary of virtue ethics, utilitarianism, and deontology. So we're going to start talking about Aristotelian virtue ethics. So basically, Aristotle says that ethical actions serve virtue, so we are being ethical when we are doing virtuous things. Now, his logic behind this is basically that, so Aristotle is seeking this thing called actualization. Okay.
Actualization, sorry to cut you off. Actualization, does he connect that to the word energia, which means to actualize something? Like, do you know if there's any connection?
Great question. No idea.
Okay. Gotcha.
So, yeah, I don't know if he connects it to any specific word.
It means activity, but
It might be true. I mean, when you think about the idea of actualization, it's basically trying to function most excellently as a human.
okay. Because he talks about in the metaphysics, don't want to hijack your presentation, but he talks about like fire, and he talks about the source of fire as not burning itself and being self-sustaining activity. And he connects that to like how the human mind works, but yeah.
Okay. Maybe with some more careful consideration, I could connect the two, but right now I can't. Okay, so for Aristotle, life is about being happy. In order to be happy, we need to be virtuous, and being happy and virtuous leads us to be excellent humans or actualized. Okay, now in virtue ethics, there are two kinds of virtue. There are moral virtues and intellectual virtues. What he basically says is the moral virtues are those activities of the soul whereby our irrational appetites and desires are controlled and directed by our rational principle, i.e., our appetites and desires have a tendency to obey the rational principle. So that's from Nicomachean Ethics. So basically, our thinking is in control of these appetites and desires that we have. So some of the moral virtues, for example, are justice, courage, and temperament. Okay. Intellectual virtue, he separates this from moral virtue, but it's essentially anything that would fall under wisdom and knowledge. And Aristotle regards this because intellect is the most unique ability of humans, or the thing that makes humans most unique, regards intellectual virtue as the higher virtue.
I have a question, like, what is the intellect to Aristotle? Like, what does that mean? Like, does that mean, like I don't want to talk metaphysically here, I mean practically, like, you know, like, is that like, oh, I'm going to make this decision over, I'm going to make decision A over decision B because decision A will be more virtuous, or like it'll be like, what is his what is the intellect for him?
Right. So with regards to intellectual virtue, again, I mentioned he basically has wisdom and knowledge. So, for example, like understanding of things. So something like study would be under an intellectual virtue. Something like inquiry about something would fall under intellectual virtue.
Curiosity in general, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, too, because Aristotle references the concept of this thing called the golden mean, which would likely fall under wisdom. So it's so the golden mean, it's basically it's an idea that many of us have probably intuited, where you don't want to do too much of a thing or too little of a thing. So, for example, you don't want to be too courageous. That might be aggressive.
Getting into trouble.
Yes. But you also don't want to be a coward all the time.
Right. Yeah. So in other words, a virtue is really more so a virtue, the way we use that term, when it's in that mean.
Yes. Yeah, that's like the most correct course of action. Okay. So there are some caveats to this. So talking about where virtues are from, virtues for Aristotle are formed from habit. So from practicing virtue, we become virtuous. And there's a really nice quote he has, as I choose my actions, I choose my character. Can put that on your Instagram bios.
One thing I want to add is that for the Greeks, character and fate are like linked, or like actually they have this same word. Character is the same word as fate for the Greeks. So I really love. I think Aristotle understands this too. That through, as you mentioned, my habit formation. I was trying to talk about this when I was talking about Aristotle a couple weeks ago. That as I wake up in the morning and I make my bed and I wash some dishes of mine. If I make the conscious intention to do something like that, then you start to get this flourishing of your cognition, the flourishing of your thinking, where it extends and it moves out of you to all these other different kinds of decisions and choices that you make in your life, and that is inherently shaping your character, but that's also inherently shaping your fate, the kinds of situations that you find yourself in, your destiny, the way in which you are sent forward into the world, and you find and you reap opportunities. So there's something that's so important in the golden mean to me. Not much or not too little. I think that the word balance has been like really like it's really misunderstood, because it's like you'll hear people say like, oh, just you gotta just implement some balance into your life or something. It's like, but nobody knows what that means. It's like when you say
Compared to what? Balance, like.
It's like how do I balance myself? And it's like I think Aristotle actually is trying to work that out and understand what balance is it's really interesting.
Can you say that again?
As I choose my actions, I choose my character. And then Chris mentioned that character is also intertwined with fate for the Greeks.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that there's a different kind of epistemology that's kind of operating here. Knowledge of moral truths doesn't come from these sort of principles, like scientific principles. It's by like phronesis, it's by practice, right? And if I know we're not talking about Christianity, but a Christian epistemology would start from religious practice rather than religious principles, right? It's by participating in prayer and community and worship do we actually arrive at a knowledge of God, right?
Yeah, and that's very similar to it's what Aristotle is getting at here, that to be something you need to practice that thing.
And one thing to say as well, I'll say this really quickly, but phronesis, it can be translated to looking around, but it really means looking around your environment in such a way that you can use the things and you can flourish from the things that you're interacting and engaging with. That's how I understand phronesis in Aristotle. It's like looking around, like what can I be doing that's more virtuous, and like how can I be enacting that in the world? Yeah.
Okay, so to be virtuous, we need to practice virtue. Now, moving on a little bit. So when we are trying to figure out if something is virtuous or not, or for a virtuous action to be virtuous, you need 4 things in place. You need to have the intention to be virtuous. You need to understand that the action is virtuous or why it is virtuous. You need reason to be in control of that action. And the action has to have good consequences, which is interesting because initially when I was going through this, I thought that virtue ethics was solely about intentions, like deontology, but good consequences is implicated in virtue ethics as well. So, for example, I mean, even if we intended to do something really good, if it harmed people in the area, it would still not be a virtuous thing. Okay. So next we're going to talk about deontological ethics. So deontological is rooted from the word deontology. Deontology means duty. So this is duty ethics. And as you can imagine, the basic idea is that you perform ethical actions, or actions are ethical when they're performed for the sake of duty, based on reason. So you use reason to decide what the duty you have is. Kant references the categorical imperative. So he invents the categorical imperative. The categorical imperative is absolute duty. It is what everyone should do given a scenario. And what he says is, sorry, did you want to say something?
No, sorry, I don't want to cut you off. It's just that I'm just like thinking about things in
Oh.
my head. Like basically, like Kant thinks the categorical imperative is inexorable. So what it means is
Yes.
that it's unstoppable. It's an unstoppable force. That literally is by necessity must happen. He's trying to make he's trying to construct this action
Yes.
like that has in the form of duty something that is unstoppable. It has to happen by necessity.
Yes.
So it sounds like Kant's categorical imperative is kind of like a participatory sort of theory of knowledge, where we start with the first principle rather than starting with participation.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
Like
when you
it's
think-
grounded in reason rather than experience?
I guess that's kind of what I mean.
Okay. Yes.
That's what I think. I don't know. I don't really fully understand Kant's categorical imperative, but I understand that there's this principle, behave in a way that's, I don't know how to phrase it, but
He says, act as if the maxim of your action were to become by your will a general law of nature.
So,
Yeah.
So whatever you are doing or proposing to do,
Yes.
you have to then universalize it and say, well, what if everybody did this?
like littering.
Yes.
Yeah,
Everybody did it,
yeah,
it's bad.
yeah. And so there's so, hello.
I that is true. What if everyone did this? But like, it's also personal as well. It's like, what if this is what I meant by the unstoppable thing. It's like that this must happen. This is tied to necessity, because it's intertwined into the very laws of nature. It's something that like it's trying to generate an input for yourself and then producing that output. It's kind of like what Matt said. It's very like. It's kind of like it's very mechanical. It's a very, like, to me, it's a principle that's mechanical. It's like input, output.
Right.
Yeah, I think the thing that you must do is also implicated in his use of the word duty. It is your duty to do this thing. Okay. Another thing he says about the categorical imperative. So one is, yes, what would happen if everyone else did this thing? The other thing he says is always treat humanity, whether in your own person or that of another, never simply as a means, but always at the same time as an end. So what he's essentially saying here is that humans have inherent value, that they are different from non-thinking objects that can be used as means. Humans have inherent value, and their humanity must be respected in decisions. So, for example, with reference to freedom being one of his highest values. Okay, and then for Kant, ethics is a function of intentions. So he is not. A thing can be ethical if for the sake of duty, even if it has bad consequences. Okay.
Say that again? I think that'd be ethical.
If done for the sake of duty, if it was something you had to do, then even if it had bad consequences, it was still the ethical decision. So for example, if you were a shopkeeper and as a shopkeeper, it's your duty to sell things at the same price to everyone. Everyone gets the same price, even though it might have poorer consequences for people with less money. You still need to do that.
Right. So he's not talking about duty trumps everything, because that then opens the door for.
Well, I think he is saying duty trumps everything.
Okay, well then the Nazis were being just carrying out their duty.
Well, I don't think he meant it in that sense.
Well,
Yeah.
So then it's not everything, right?
So, well, I think there's an equivocation on what duty means.
Yeah.
Duty means obeying the
Yeah.
categorical imperative.
So I will say though, like even though so when I say intentions too, I guess what I should really be saying is function of duty. So, but for Kant, duties based on the categorical imperative can be universal. So there are universal laws that everyone should abide by that I'm certain that Kant would not say, oh, the Nazis did this great ethical thing.
How do you
So-
see duty? Do you see it as a role or a responsibility? Like, is duty like the kind of duty that a soldier has when he's following orders from the sergeant?
Yeah, something like that.
So, like, duty would be like I have responsibility that someone is set for me, and this responsibility has to happen in order for me to get some end accomplished.
Say that again.
It's basically saying like I have to go out and fight in order for, I don't know, my country to be safe.
Yeah. Well, yes, that could be one.
There's another
Duty.
kind that I was thinking about. This is from Aeschylus's play, the Oresteia, which happens after Plato's, I think it's after Plato's period. It's a tragic playwriter. He writes about this play called the Oresteia. It's connected to the Iliad. You probably know about it, where Orestes, he's Agamemnon's son. He has to kill. He has to avenge his father by killing his mother.
Yeah.
And he finds that in itself, I'm not sure if that would be a duty that he has to avenge his father by killing his mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Matt's reply to me is the correct. I think it's within the context of let's just make it dumb it down as easy as I can for myself. It's within the context of doing the right thing. It can't
Yes.
It can't be just broadly duty, like responsibility of any kind, because that can be made into anything. So
Yeah.
within virtue, I guess. Actually, Joanne in the chat, Dave and Joanne are watching online, and she asked, are virtue and ethics the same thing?
No. So even in the context of virtue ethics, so for example, basically virtue is like a trait of something that makes it good.
Good, yeah.
And that's like very broad, but referencing some of the character traits that Aristotle would reference, virtue might be something like courage. Courage might be in virtue ethics a mode for ethics, but ethics is really just discussing the way that we behave in a community.
Yeah. So they're related, but they're not the same thing.
Yes. And what you'll notice too, based on the 4 conditions that Aristotle gives for an ethical action, for a virtuous action to be virtuous, you can do a courageous thing, but for example, if you don't understand why it was a courageous thing, it wasn't actually virtuous.
Right.
That relates to the
Yeah.
thing, the talking about the arhe. that
Yes.
that in order for something to be good, you
Right.
don't necessarily need to know the reason why it is so, and that's an interesting thing.
So you guys are actually saying two different things,
Yes.
right? Because you're saying you don't need to know why or the ins and outs of it in order for it to be good.
In order for it to be apparent, in order for you to see it, see the thing as good, the goodness doesn't need, you don't need to know the reason why
Yeah.
something is good for
Yeah.
it, because it's just good.
And yet,
For itself.
what John is saying, correct me if I'm wrong, is something isn't virtuous. You're not being virtuous if you don't know like why you're doing it, or like if you don't understand the connection that you're between the virtue and your action. It's almost like goodness exists apart from me and my actions, in the sense that I can do good, I can not do good, but it's not going to change what good is. But in order for me to be virtuous, I need to know what good is and intentionally.
Yes, but that's the interesting thing. You know it by not knowing. This is the unhypothetical first principle of Aristotle. This is a principle that he makes, where it's like I forget how he describes the principle, but it's basically saying that like we know things, but we don't actually have a way of knowing how we know them.
Mm-hmm.
We simply just know things, and then we have to take it as, but the good is predicated on that knowledge that we don't have access to knowing.
So, so what Dan's talking about is I think that is really important for the history of philosophy, is because Plato and Aristotle, they weren't doing epistemology. So epistemology, they were doing ontology, right? Because ontology, the good is given to us. Like we know the good, and now we're just determining, I don't know, the nature of this good. Whereas epistemology, with Hume and Kant and whatnot, is they're saying, okay, we don't know the good. It's not, we don't have access to the good. Okay, then it becomes a rift between our knowledge and the good itself, right? So the question becomes, well, how do we actually come to know the good? Whereas Aristotle and Plato would assume, oh, we do know the good, right? And this is how we pursue the good. Whereas later philosophers, especially the atheistic ones, it's we don't know the good, and then it becomes more of an epistemological project, right? That makes sense?
Yes.
A little bit. A little confusing. but-
Yeah. I guess to sort of like wrap up this discussion here, basically like, yeah, you can do something that is, that appears virtuous, but it might not be virtuous if, say, like, you could do something good by accident, or, for example, you could do something that's not intended to be virtuous. So an example of that might be the classic ethical egoism. So if I gave money to charity to get a tax break, is that virtuous? Okay. Okay.
So maybe a closing thought.
Yeah, maybe I'll just briefly go over utilitarianism, and that'll be it. So everyone kind of knows what utilitarianism is. Basically trying to promote good consequences. So they have the greatest happiness principle. I think that's what that is. And then within that, there are two main principles within utilitarianism. One is liberalism. So we promote, or people have as much freedom, or should have as much freedom, as does not harm others or the freedom of others. So liberalism. And utility. So the greatest good for the greatest number. Okay. Now, the principle of liberalism is kind of important, and it feeds into the principle of no harm. So traditionally, when people have criticized utilitarianism, they say, oh, well, you can sacrifice the interests of smaller groups for those of larger groups. That's not true. And if you, or at least in some cases, that's not true. So, for example, Bentham and Mill, John Stuart Mill, talk about him a lot. Boring guy, but good thoughts. He has the principle of no harm, so where basically you cannot sacrifice the interests of smaller groups for those of larger groups.
Right, it's by definition violating your principle that you're trying to implement.
Yes, exactly. And then utilitarianism is only concerned with consequences. So interesting case, I think, for utilitarianism is accidents. Accidents are still regarded as, say, like, you know, you do something good by accident, that would still be an ethical action.
Sure.
Okay. Cool.
That's great. No, no, good stuff. I mean, can I just reiterate for our sake and for anybody listening, like, I very much enjoy these times. 'Cause this is right up my alley of like the things that I'm interested in, want to learn about, and especially if we throw in some more Bible study like we did tonight.
Yeah, that was
I love everything
That
else
was-
too,
that was
but
all-
like
that's
to
all
me,
good
that
here. Yeah.
giving a good, well-rounded education. So, all right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Our biggest audience ever
Thanks.
Nice.
on a Sunday night, at least. Okay, so end stream.
Want to show that video, Matt?
Dan's gotta go. Do you wanna quickly watch the video?
I can throw it on there.
Alright.